the unboxing. Word of advice for all you people who are trying to start a tech show. Don't do unboxing videos.
This is your Apple Sheep here, and today I'm very excited to be unboxing the Nexus 6P.
It goes perfect with my iMac, and it feels like it was made by the same company.
Is it the dopamine hit from unboxings? Is it to generate traffic for our own social media accounts? There's so many details we look for, no matter how tiny or insignificant they may be. What changed? What's new? You've probably noticed how little people in our real lives actually care about this kind of thing. That's why we kind of have to resort to the infinite vast World Wide Web to find other people with the same interests as us. Thankfully, YouTube and Twitter and Reddit help us find other people with the exact same obsessions with tablets, phones, laptops, watches, headphones, or even come down to the nodes that our processors use. I suppose it could come down to the fact that this technology is everywhere. I guess discussing the latest and greatest technology would be a great way to generate traffic to your channel, because these devices, like our smartphones, sell by the hundreds of millions. Literally over half of the human population on Earth now owns one of these things. Maybe our obsession with tech could be defended by wanting to help out our friends and family members that don't share our same obsession, but we want to be able to advise them on making the best possible purchase decision. Is that why we're watching 8 different channels unbox the same 20 things every year? At least for me, I can recognize my obsession with technology started very, very young, even though I didn't even realize it at the time.
Hi, it's Drew. I've installed this new camera for my, well, not a keyboard and mouse for my new birthday. It's really cool. It's the Apple Magic Mouse. It's pretty thin. It's really cool because it's a trackpad. I mean, you just scroll your finger up and down, and the scrolling on the keyboard goes up and down just by doing that. On summer vacation, we brought on this 201 electronic kit, and I just finished wiring the most complex one I've ever done. There's a lot of different cables on this thing. Yeah, so it's pretty complex. So that's what it does.
What are we gonna see today?
Trains, planes, automobiles. We market these things to babies and children from a very, very young age, and I was definitely no exception. I fell for it very, very hard. In fact, the remnants of my childhood obsession with trains can actually be seen in some of the background footage for my iPhone 11 B-roll. Thankfully, my old childhood toys didn't go to waste, and they are now happily being used by my nieces and nephew. But as you get older, human beings have a tendency to want more. I had my car phase as well, where I was obsessed with Lamborghinis and Hummers, until I figured out what the concept of miles per gallon was. But once I started watching shows and movies about dogfighting, that's where my love of planes began. My parents can attest my obsession with aircraft was certainly more expensive than my obsession with trains. For whatever reason, I felt the need to convert my bedroom into an aviation museum, complete with names and fun facts about every little model airplane I wanted to make. And I was even drawing up my own concepts of planes and missiles, and at one point wanted to name a missile something unique and creative that would be explosive when it hit the tail of a plane, and I came up with a name that a lot of you may have heard of by now. Another few years go by and I started my YouTube obsession. Really with Soldier Knows Best, MKBHD, Everything Apple Pro, and iJustine. I was watching all of their stuff as much as I possibly could. I became absolutely enamored by the iPhone 4 leaks, and I couldn't believe the concept or idea that there was an unreleased Apple product out in the wild, and we got to talk about it and debate whether or not it was real, only to have it be proven right months later with the official unveil. And eventually, after watching all of those different content creators so long, I decided I wanted to pursue this field myself.
The iPhone 5. I'm still using it. I still think the box looks pretty epic.
I wasn't good at it, but I enjoyed it, so I kept going. And to be perfectly honest, I think a lot of the success to my YouTube channel doesn't really come down to talent or strategy. It's really a lot of just pure dumb luck. The likelihood that I would be that age where I was obsessed with up-and-coming YouTubers, and it would also be right before Apple launched one of their most successful products of all time, and none of this was really what I planned. I was just interested in it at the time, but of course, it really ended up working in my favor. With the launch of the iPhone 6 and 6S, my channel was just starting to get off the ground, and with controversies like the iPhone 7 removing the headphone jack, that brought a lot of conversation and discourse to my channel and brand. Followed that up with the biggest iPhone launch of all time, the iPhone 10, where there were more differences year over year than any other iPhone in history, and I don't think we're ever going to have an upgrade that massive again. And I think even today, in 2025, there's a lot of momentum from that build-up phase at Apple, where there was so much new stuff being added, and there was a device, the smartphone, taking over the world quicker than anyone ever could have predicted. It used to be just thought of as a niche business tool that was slowly becoming a must-have for even young teenagers when they're going to high school or middle school. Nowadays, you'll find even kids in elementary school rocking $1,000 iPhones. And there's so much momentum from that growth. There's so much momentum from all of the changes the smartphone has brought that I think a lot of that energy, a lot of that hype and excitement and nostalgia that people have, that explosion of Apple and the explosion of all of its competitors, Samsung and Google and OnePlus or Nothing or Oppo, is still rolling into today's coverage of tech. All of that really carried a bunch of tech YouTubers through that 2015 to 2020 phase. If you were making tech videos during that time, there was a lot of demand for content and there was a lot of room for growth. And even though I don't think the tech community has as much to be excited for or as much excitement as there used to be, people keep watching because of these memories, because of these positive associations we had with these channels back in the golden age of the tech era. And even though we're disappointed by it year after year, we make the same memes about how Apple didn't do enough or Samsung didn't change enough, and we keep watching, we keep tuning in to find out, does Apple have another one more thing moment around the corner? We're desperately longing to be impressed or excited about this tech again because there were so many great moments in the past, whether it be the radical redesign of the 2018 iPad Pro, which Apple has really just been iterating on for the past 7 years now, or the ginormous transition from Intel to Apple Silicon of 2020, where we saw battery life and performance boosts that we'll probably never see again. So even though Apple and other companies continue to disappoint us and not really radically rethink these form factors and keep giving us the same stuff over and over again with slightly different wallpapers, slightly better chips, barely improved cameras, the question still remains. Why do we keep watching? Why do we keep expecting big upgrades when year after year they just don't happen? Well, it could be because as we get older, especially as we're facing more of the daunting responsibilities of adulthood, we love escapism. We love to not think about the real issues we're facing in our personal lives or that the world is facing as a whole. A lot of us just get extremely depressed when we think about some of the political unrest or wars going on throughout the world, or if we have to confront our own shortcomings of work or school, thinking about how we're not doing enough or how we could be doing more, or maybe about how flawed some of our relationships are in our own personal families. And, there's lots of different forms of escapism, but perhaps tech is slightly more relatable to the everyday person than fiction. We all have some of those friends, maybe you are one, that are super into Dungeons and Dragons, or Star Wars lore, Star Trek lore, or Lord of the Rings. I could even talk about some of these things for hours and hours. Trust me, I've tried.
It's Star Wars time.
There's different levels of escapism depending on the person, but ultimately tech, it's something that we typically have to interact with on a daily basis, whether you're into it or not. Whereas knowing what the latest stories are coming out of the Star Wars universe or whatever fiction universes you follow, they don't necessarily impact all of us if we don't pay attention to them, but knowing what Apple or Google is doing with their latest products and services help us understand how to plan or how to use these products and services effectively. Should I keep buying a bunch of lightning cables if it turns out Apple is gonna go away with it soon? Should I keep paying for Netflix if their prices are going to continue to rise? You could also argue technology is a bit more of an optimistic form of escapism, because as the tech companies are all competing with one another, the consumer should really only win, right? Because every year they're all trying to one-up each other. So as Google and Apple and Samsung are all trying to make the better smartphone, we all get to decide which one fits our needs best. Whereas if you're following a fictitious universe as a form of escapism like Star Wars, it may get worse as time goes on, and there's a decent indication that as more and more writers or directors try to make Star Wars content, it doesn't necessarily get better over time, but at least in theory, in an ideal world, technology pretty much only gets better over time, right? We're arguing about, does that slightly better zoom make a difference, but it is ultimately still better in the end. But I think there might be an even bigger reason so many of us care about the latest and greatest tech that's coming out in the world. And I think it's not just a matter of being obsessed with escapism. I think it might be deeper than that. It's really, in a sense, the best representation of the time periods we're living in. As long as humanity has existed, there's been forces for good and forces for evil. Cultures, accents, traditions may change a little bit, but ultimately, humanity's always been flawed, and I think we're always going to be. It may sound depressing, but I do think it's just a reality. Humans have had varying degrees of selfishness no matter what time period we're really living in. Technology, on the other hand, has pretty much always been changing. Technology has a huge impact on the greatest challenges of our time and also the greatest opportunities of our time. Clashes of cultures between continents really only was possible because of technology that was constructed around those times. You wouldn't have had colonization without the development of new ships that were able to travel further than ever before. And you wouldn't be able to travel that far without the technology of tracking the stars and being able to figure out where on the planet you are, and a lot of that came down to clockwork. And on a more sad note, wars and death tolls are heavily influenced by the technology that each country has available to them at any given time. It's really, really sad that as long as humanity has been around, wars have basically existed to some extent. However, the tech available at each of those time periods heavily dictates the victor, and also whose side ends up saving the most lives or ending the most. The way we live, the way we work, and the way we fight all stems down to the technology of our time. Our youth are facing challenges with screen time and social media addiction and comparing themselves to others, and exposure to inappropriate content that youth just a couple of decades ago never even had to consider or think about. So I don't think technology is ultimately a good thing or a bad thing. It's really just powerful. And maybe that impact it has, for better or for worse, on our lives is the reason I love covering today and tomorrow's technology. And this is in a much grander sense than just Apple, of course. It's the one thing that you can look at humanity interacting with at any given time period, and just by seeing the technology available, you can figure out where they are in time without ever throwing a number on the screen. Like watching a movie or a show and seeing what kind of phone they have on them, or seeing what kind of vehicles that they're getting in and out of at that time, helps you figure out exactly where they are in history. I've been working on this Tailosive Tech channel for over a decade now, and ultimately, I've not done a good job defending this, but I don't really just want to be known as the guy obsessed with Apple products. I want it to reflect my overall grander interest in technology, and it truly shouldn't even be based around what kind of technology generates the most clicks, because I don't think that would be honest to you, and I find it unrealistic to imagine a situation in which I happen to be the most pumped and the most excited by whatever the most popular technology of our time is. That's why I want to think bigger picture about technology with this channel moving forward, and I'm not going to stop talking about Apple, but I want to widen the scope of what we're willing to talk about here. And I'm sure that leaves all of you asking, well, Drew, what is the next big thing? What upcoming technology will define the time we live in? For the past 20 years, I think it's safe to say it's the rise in popularity of smartphones. And it's so much more than just a screen and cameras and batteries in our pocket. It's combined so many electronics together, whether it be the digital camera, the wallet, the iPod, the music player, the internet communicator. All of those small, pocketable, personal electronics have all been rolled into one, and also taken advantage of the information age we live in today. All of that information that can now travel across the globe faster than ever before, it's changed the way we live, it's changed the way we work, and it's even influenced our family dynamics in massive ways. And it's not always good. This technology that's now available to our youth is now creating very easy ways for teenagers to ignore those around them, but it's also enabled people to find loved ones or fall in love with people from other countries, people who live thousands of miles away that they've never met. All of this wouldn't be possible without the internet and without the wide availability of the smartphones that allow people to kind of keep a long distance relationship in their pocket everywhere they go. We can use this information and technology to get obsessed with whatever app happens to be our vice. Could be a game, could be a social media, and we can also now use it to keep in touch with our family and friends that live too far away that we used to have to write letters to or try to make phone calls with. Now we can actually see them in real time, no matter where we are in the world.
And we are calling it iPhone.
So that was the last 20 years of technology. What will the next 20 years look like? What's really going to change? And not just be fascinating as technology for technology's sake, but what technology will have a massive impact on our daily lives and change the way we live and work and introduce new opportunities or new challenges? Well, I think it's